In the beginning, there was all darkness. And in that blanket of darkness germinated a seed of light. And that seed of light got bigger and bigger. And then, like any seeds, it split. And as it split, from it came Brahma, the being, the God who had generated himself. Brahma had a desire to create. So he did. He started creating. He created the three worlds. He created the five elements: earth, water, fire, wind, space. He created the sun, the moon, and the stars around. And he created many, many planets. And on the earth, he created mountains and oceans and trees and many beings. And when he had created all of that, he waited and he sat down. And then he had a thought. The thought started stirring in his head. And then the thought made its way all the way through his throat to his tongue. And when it came into his mouth, it turned into word. And once that word came into his mouth, more and more thoughts started coming in his head. And they all went into his mouth. And his mouth started filling up with words. And soon his mouth was, because it was full of words. And when there were even more words which entered his mouth, he could not keep it closed any longer. And his mouth sprung open. And as it did, the words came tumbling out of his mouth. And they cascaded down on the ground. And Brahma watched. And when he looked down, there was a pool of water. And he watched the water as it stirred and changed. And it was crystal clear. But then it turned milky. And then it started twirling and swirling and getting higher and bigger. And soon the water had turned into a goddess. And hence Saraswati was born. Saraswati had long flowing black hair and loose garments. And as soon as she was out in the wind, she started dancing. And as she danced, the words from her body went out in the space. And they created sentences. And that was the source of knowledge. And that knowledge turned into wisdom. And as Saraswati danced, it created music and melody. And she continued dancing like no one was watching. And Saraswati decided to paint the world. So she painted the sun gold, and she painted the moon silver, and she added sparkle in the stars. And then she took a bit of light, held it in her hand, and she rubbed it. And as she sprinkled it, colors came out. And the ocean became blue, and the trees became green, and the flowers became yellow and red. And Saraswati still danced. And she continued dancing. And when she touched the water, she created taste: bitter, sweet, sour, salty. And as her body merged with the wind, it created fragrance. And she still continued dancing like no one was looking, until she felt that someone was looking. So she stopped. And she turned around. and looked and saw Brahma. Brahma with his eyes wide open and his mouth half open. And Saraswati felt a little bit of discomfort. She could no longer dance like she was dancing. Brahma was facing east, so Saraswati turned around and went west behind Brahma. And she took a deep breath, and then she turned around and looked. And lo and behold, she could not believe it, because Brahma had grown a head on the face. So now Brahma had two heads, one facing east, one facing west. Saraswati didn't like it. She sort of ran towards north and then looked, and yes, Brahma created a head again facing her, facing north. So she get more agitated and she ran south, and yes, he created another head facing south. Out of distress, Saraswati started dancing, but not that free dance that she was doing when no one was looking. She started spinning round and round and round. And as she spinned, just made a whirling sound, and she lifted and she started soaring up in the sky, and she went high, 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 all the way up, eyes closed, and just kept on going up, up, up until she stopped. And she looked up and she saw a face. Blue skin, 3 eyes, beautiful smile, dreadlocks, a little moon, crescent moon. It was Shiva, the kind, loving God, Shiva. Shiva looked at Saraswati, smiled, and offered her his hand. And Saraswati took his hand. And then as Shiva pulled Saraswati over, he looked down to see what was she running away from. And when he looked down, he saw Brahma. Brahma had now grown a head here, right on top, facing Saraswati, going up. Shiva saw the lust in Brahma's eyes. So Shiva closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and when he opened his eyes and lifted his right hand, he took his trident and threw it down. And like a thunderbolt, it went shooting down and it decapitated Brahma's 5th head. And the head tumbled down and disappeared into nothing. And Brahma came to his senses and thought, what am I doing? And he folded himself and went back in. And once Brahma was gone, no one was watching. So Saraswati came down and she danced. And every spring, Saraswati comes and she generates life, and she brings the flowers and the trees and makes the world a better world. Uttishta, uttishta, he vani, uttishta hansani dvaje, uttishta brahmano ragni, trailokyam mangalam kuru. Jagrahitvam Mahadevi, Jagrahitvam Saraswati, Jagrahitvam Chaturvedi, Lokaraksha Vidim Kuru, Lokaraksha Vidim Kuru. Wake up, O Saraswati, wake up and bless the 3 worlds. And now it is time for you to get up.